Will you define treatment for me?
Yes, treatment would be defined as the care of a patient seeking medical attention.
I'm walking out of here, guys. We'll see. Right, Willie?
Right.
I want you to think real hard about what your spine is worth, Mr. Walker.
A patient will come to you at his moment of greatest dread, hand you a knife and say, "Doctor, cut me open."
Look, the chief put his hand up. The chief put his hand up. Look, he voted.
By the way, we had that water brought in special for you folks. Came from Well and Hinckley.
So, does anyone care to touch on this further?
The depiction of health and bioethics in film is a delicate subject to approach, as cinema allows us to examine healthcare through an entertainment lens that chooses the perspective in which the topic is seen. Since films usually alter storylines to make a film more popular for the general public, they can be less useful or accurate for true medical education. However, popular films also attempt to depict true or inspirational stories that incorporate a moral lesson and multiple points of view, whereas medical educational films only center on one dimension of an issue. This leads to the question, how do films appropriately approach healthcare issues? This video will look at 5 films spanning the various fields of health and bioethics. The topics of doctor and patient relationships, disability and autonomy, healthcare systems and institutions, the health of populations, and disease and illness will be addressed respectively with the films Patch Adams, Born on the 4th of July, One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest, Aaron Brockovich, and Rams. This selection covers a range of topics that interconnect with each other and include both fictional and based on true stories. Patch Adams will examine the doctor-patient relationship and the moral implications. Born on the 4th of July will examine the doctor-patient relationship as well as Ron Kovic's disability and autonomy. One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest will explore disability and autonomy, the doctor-patient relationship, as well as the healthcare system and institutions. Aaron Brockovich will examine the healthcare systems and institutions as well as epidemics. And Rams will examine epidemics and its connection to the doctor-patient relationship. This video will argue that films approach healthcare issues appropriately by including medical accuracy, multiple viewpoints, and emotional depth. Patch Adams is a film based off of the real-life hunter Patch Adams, and follows Patch's journey from being self-committed to an institution due to suicidal thoughts, to his struggles in middle school, to his fight for moral doctor-patient relationships, and graduation as a doctor. The film came out in 1998, 4 years after the show ER began. Unlike ER's fast-paced, high-tech quasi-documentary sense of medical realism that the show depicts among weak relationships with patients, Patch Adams focuses on the humanity within the medical field with an emphasis on a positive doctor-patient relationship.
I was just wondering the patient's name. Marjorie. Hi, Marjorie.
Hi. In the film, Dean Walcott states to the medical students,
It is our mission here to rigorously and ruthlessly train the humanity out of you and make you into something better. We're gonna make doctors out of you.
whereas Patch disagrees, stating,
If you want to become a doctor, we have to learn to treat the patient as well as the disease. That's why we have to dive into people.
This is directly in contrast to the other medical shows, like House, which privileges biomedical science over patient care and claims that
treating illnesses is why we became doctors. Treating patients is what makes most doctors miserable.
Patch Adams privileges the bioethics of the medical field while still acknowledging the science behind Patch's methods.
And the American Journal of Medicine has found that laughter increases secretion of catecholamines and endorphins, which in turn increases oxygenation of the blood, relaxes the arteries, speeds up the heart, decreases blood pressure, which has a positive effect on all cardiovascular and respiratory ailments, as well as overall increasing the immune system response.
Smart clown, eh?
Additionally, the film includes multiple perspectives from Patch, Karen, Mitch, and Dean Walcott on the best ways to treat patients. This ranges from the Dean stating that
Patients don't need to be entertained. They don't need a friend. They need a doctor.
to Patch arguing to the board that there should be a doctor-patient relationship, as they are inevitable. The film also shows Patch's shaken faith after almost losing hope in humanity,
People are good. Trust people? Ha!
for confirming his beliefs that patients deserve care. Finally, Patch Adams connects with viewers through emotional depth by depicting children's wards and the terminally ill. Unlike doctors who lose their temper with children patients and later regret their choices, Patch prioritizes the children's comfort by brightening their day, which in turn helps medically. Patch also connects to the terminally ill, as the medical field is about
Improving the quality of life, not just delaying death.
Patch Adams is an excellent example of a film depicting the doctor-patient relationship, as the film includes medical accuracy, multiple perspectives, and emotional depth that connects to the audience. The film, Born on the 4th of July, depicts the story of Ron Kovic as he struggles with his disability following his tours in the Vietnam War. Based on the life of the real Ron Kovic, being paralyzed from the waist down, Ron struggles through his journey of acceptance and gaining autonomy. When returning home after his rehabilitation in the hospital, Ron is faced with the struggles of paralyzation and the lack of education about his disability.
Oh, I put some handles on the toilet for you. Ronnie.
Thanks, Dad.
This encourages the idea of disability cultural competence, where curriculums are set within healthcare settings and designed with the goal of implementing justice and autonomy. Ron is continually faced with this struggle, as his disability is not understood to its full extent by his family, and is faced with judgment while he attempts to accept his disability and heal from his PTSD.
Ronnie, I mean, all they're trying to say, Ronnie, is they don't want more people to come back like you.
Like me. That's easy for them to say. That's an easy excuse. But where were they when their country needed them? Where were they? Where?
Ronnie, you served your country. I mean, what'd you get out of it? I mean, look at you.
This portrays the advocacy for disability cultural competence as it promotes quality of life, resilience cultivation, and dignity management with education for people with disabilities and their families. The disability bioethics depicted in Born on the 4th of July depict the medical accuracy of disabilities war veterans face, as well as the familial dynamics and cultural responses. The film also depicts the perspectives of Ron's family, who have to deal with Ron's suffering.
Penis! Ron! No, not with the catheter! For God's sake! Penis!
Eli, I can't stand it anymore.
Get in the room.
The hell with you!
Get in your room.
Go to the church, they say it is a sin if you believe it.
As well as Charlie, a war vet struggling with paralyzation as well. These perspectives depict the multifaceted ways of suffering. Suffering is an affliction of the person, not the body, as there is a complexity of suffering as there is complexity to one's personhood. The film depicts Ron's family suffering as Ron struggles to accept his bodily state and lashes out.
Maybe a little trip is all you need. That place down in Mexico you were talking about.
I want to go to Mexico.
After kicking Ron out, he then meets Charlie in a Mexican retreat for Vietnam War veterans who also have disabilities. This creates a community for Ron. Although unhealthy, he meets others who are experiencing similar suffering. Ron eventually finds hope that propels him to become an anti-war advocate. Hope is the perception that what one wants to happen will happen, a perception that is fueled by desire and in response to felt deprivation. Although hope can sometimes be misplaced, as seen earlier in the film with Ron denying his condition, his acceptance of his suffering creates the conditions for him to find hope. This emotional ride following Ron Kovic's journey through war and paralyzation connects with viewers as it displays the perspective of family members and those who have experienced the war. Born on the 4th of July appropriately shows a depiction of disability as it contains medical accuracy to the experience of the disabled, portrays how disability affects not only the afflicted, and conveys an emotional depth in Ron as he struggles to accept his condition and find hope. One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest is an example of healthcare institutions from the 1960s depicted in film. The film is based on the novel by Ken Kesey with the same title, and follows Randall McMurphy as he is committed to a mental institution and fights for the rights and care of his fellow patients in the psychiatric ward. The film portrays the lack of care given to psychiatric patients as well as the lack of care in healthcare during the late 1960s. Nurse Ratched lacked the display of disability and cultural competence as she leads the patients of the ward to live in a specific way according to her expectations, despite the patient's disabilities ranging from mild to severe. The film contains an accurate portrayal of the conditions inside mental hospitals during the late 1960s, as staff and patients had poor quality of life that led to rampant crowding, patient abuse, and neglect from staff. The film aligns the viewer with the patients as it follows the American philosophy that the country prides itself on decency, but has allowed the healthcare system to unfairly treat fellow citizens. The main viewpoint the film holds is that Randall is an individual who fights for independence as most Americans idolize, yet is forced to fight against the American healthcare system as vulnerable patients cannot fight for themselves. However, the film allows room for the audience to sympathize with Nurse Ratched, as she always has reasons to back up her decision.
A little change never hurt, huh? A little variety?
Well, it's not necessarily true, Mr. McMurphy. You know, some men on the ward take a long, long time to get used to the schedule. Change it now, and they might find it very disturbing.
Oh, fuck the schedule. I mean, they can go back to the schedule after the series. I'm talking about the World Series, Nurse Reggie. Huh?
Well, anyway, this is no way to proceed about this. How would it be if we had a vote?
The film can then show both Randall's and Nurse Ratched's point of view, while still aligning the viewer with Randall. The film reaches viewers through Randall's continual efforts to increase the patient's quality of life despite fighting a losing battle. His final sacrifice in revenge for Billy's death is where Randall becomes a martyr. His lobotomy signifies the strength and indifference of the healthcare system and its injustices. The film's accurate portrayal of the hospital's abuse during the 1960s, the insert viewpoints from Nurse Ratched, and the emotional connection to Randall McMurphy make One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest an excellent example of how film should approach health and bioethical topics, and led to the film's well-deserved Academy Award Best Picture win. The film Erin Brockovich is based on the real-life woman and environmental activist Erin Brockovich. The film centers around Erin's legal fight against PG&E for the pollution of the local water supply with chromium-6, which caused severe health ailments for the families living in Hinkley, the town surrounding the PG&E plant. Erin Brockovich highlights the injustices and epidemics caused by corporations that dispose of harsh, toxic chemicals inadequately that lead to human suffering. Concern about the water supply of towns reaches back to the 1800s with the cholera outbreak. After discovering that the source of the disease was drinking infected water, health was established as a right of citizenship that led to advancements in sanitation and better living conditions. Similarly, the film ends with Erin winning the lawsuit and PG&E not only compensating the families affected, but also claiming that they no longer use chromium-6 in their cooling processes. Epidemiology and the study of population health is what Erin Brockovich finds herself in the middle of as she examines the lawsuit files and begins to ask herself what a healthy society looks like and how she can fix it. The film shows how the United States not having a national system for providing health care impacts its citizens, as the first family she meets must rely on PG&E to pay for their medical bills.
They paid for the doctor's visit.
They did.
You bet. Paid for a checkup for the whole family. And not like with insurance where you pay and a year goes by and maybe you see some money. They just took care of it, just like that.
This then results in further covering up the crimes of the corporation, as they pay the doctor to lie to their patients. This demonstrates the state of healthcare institutions in the United States, as well as how the doctor-patient relationship can become corrupt when the doctor works for the company causing the ailments. The film depicts the epidemiological transition, as the main causes of death have shifted from infectious to chronic diseases. Although public health leaders have suggested preventative medicine, this does not prevent illnesses when they are directly linked to corporations polluting local water supplies with carcinogens. The epidemic of chronic diseases in Erin Brockovich is accurately portrayed, as the film depicts the side effects caused by carcinogens as well as the legal follow-up to the discovery. The film also portrays the effects of the epidemic on the townspeople. Although Erin is a lead, the families are the heart of the film, as their illnesses caused by PG&E are what keep Erin fighting. Erin's emotional involvement in the family's journeys shows how an epidemic affects the masses. Further, the film also portrays the legal perspective that Ed Maestri had to go through to win the case. Finally, the film connects with the audience through Erin's fight for justice.
Ted's got Crohn's disease. Rita has chronic headaches and nausea and underwent a hysterectomy last fall. Ted grew up in Hinkley. His brother Robbie and his wife May and their 5 children, Robbie Jr., Martha, Ed, Rose, and Peter, also lived on the plume. Their number is 454-9554. You want their diseases?
Okay, look, I think we got off on the wrong foot here.
That's all you got, lady. 2 wrong feet in fucking ugly shoes.
Depicting the struggles of her family life and professional life shows how far she was willing to go to fix this epidemic. The film also portrays the struggles of the families directly affected by showing mothers similar to Erin, mothers that are trying to protect their children from something they know nothing about. Erin Brockovich is an impactful film based on a real-life epidemic that approaches the issue of public health appropriately by accurately portraying the effects of the epidemic caused by PG&E, illustrating the multiple viewpoints of the lawsuit and struggles against the corporation, and connecting with audiences through the symbol of family. Although Rams focuses on the diseases of sheep rather than people, the film depicts how people respond to disease and illness when faced with an epidemic. Disease is viewed as the opposite of well-being, and essential to being eradicated by the WHO's utopian definition. Identifying someone, or livestock, as sick results in serious social implications that change people's lives, as seen in Rams. The moment that Gumi finds and announces that Kitty's sheep have scrapie, the entire village becomes panicked and restless, with resentment against Gumi. The concepts of health versus disease have consequences, such as the distribution of healthcare resources and social judgments about those who are labeled healthy or sick. This representation of community response to a harmful disease is accurate, as it portrays a response that people have to hearing about illnesses. Although the sheep and rams do not have a social construct surrounding their illnesses, humans exist in a knowledgeable biomedical community. The key event when Gumi diagnoses Kitty's prize sheep leads to the unique social response of the village to hearing about scrapie. Although Gumi is just a sheep farmer like the rest of the community, he enters into a doctor-patient relationship with a sheep in the valley as he gives them a diagnosis.
Þetta reynst nú vera riða, ekki bara líklegt að verði skorið niður hjá okkur báðum? Ég hef enga trú á því að þetta sé riða.
Even though the prognosis of scrapie is dangerous to the community, it is essential for the community to know about the affliction and central to the doctor-patient relationship to report the diagnosis. This accuracy to the reaction surrounding the news of disease is accurate as the community relies on the sheep to survive. In addition to the reactions, the film offers multiple viewpoints on how people react to the news of illness. Gumi decides to report the illness for the good of the community and the sheep despite the possible repercussions. Gumi denies the fact that his sheep have scrapie, and 2 villagers move out of the town.
Við erum búin að ákveða að hætta. Bara, við erum hvort þið að verða gjaldþrota og já, þannig að við ætlum bara að nota tækifærið og fara í hann.
Gumi has a perspective of the doctor with the responsibility of announcing the sheep's diagnosis to the community and health officials. The villagers are in close perspective to Kitty, as the sheep are also their life. When they are told that all their sheep must be killed, they decide to leave the sheep business and therefore the valley. This represents the reactions to epidemics when people learn about disease being announced. Further, Rams delves into the brotherly relationship between Gumi and Kitty, which is rekindled over the sheep's illnesses. This takes the viewer on an emotional journey that connects the sheep to their family. Although they are livestock, the sheep's lineage is tied to their own lineage and father, making the sheep like family to them. This emotional connection to the sheep makes the diagnosis similar to a family member getting sick. Rams approaches the topic of disease and illness appropriately as the film uses medical accuracy, multiple perspectives, and emotional depth in its characters. In conclusion, the films Patch Adams, Born on the 4th of July, One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest, Aaron Brockovich, and Rams all interconnect through the issues of health and bioethics. The films appropriately portray the many issues of healthcare through medical accuracy, showing multiple perspectives, and communicating emotional depth in its characters. Patch Adams portrays the doctor-patient relationship through Patch's journey through medical school and treating the patients rather than just treating their illnesses. Born on the 4th of July depicts the experience of disability and autonomy through Ron's journey to accepting his paralyzation and finding his autonomy in his anti-war efforts. One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest depicts the healthcare systems of the late 1960s, with Randall McMurphy being committed to a mental ward and fighting for patients' rights. Aaron Brockovich portrays the health of populations when the corporation PG&E pollutes Hinkley's water source, causing an epidemic and the legal fight against it. Rams depict the issues of disease and illness when it is diagnosed in close proximity and affects a small community. In conclusion, the subject of healthcare is a very sensitive subject as everyone has a connection to the issue in one way or another. Films can approach this topic appropriately by depicting accurate medical representation, using multiple perspectives throughout the film, depicting the emotional effects of the issue within the characters themselves.
I think this meeting is over.
Damn right it is.